Solving inequalities. Our first step would be to identify which variable you are solving for. Then we'll still clear parentheses, fractions, and decimals. Make sure there's just one variable. You can combine like terms or add the opposite to both sides of the inequality. Then you'll need to isolate the variable, getting rid of the furthest thing first. You can add the opposite, or you can multiply by the reciprocal. And later when we run into exponents, you can take the square root. The major difference between solving equations and inequalities occurs when you multiply or divide by a negative. Then the direction that the inequality sign points will change. There are an infinite number of solutions in an inequality. A graph is a good way to represent all of them. Let's look at some graphs of inequalities. X is greater than 2. Because it's greater than and there's no or equal to, we're going to have an open circle on the number 2. When there is no numbering on a number line, we'll assume each mark represents 1 unit. So the open circle at 2, and to be greater, we would shade to the right. For our next inequality, x is less than or equal to 3/2. Well, let's assume that each mark here represents a 1/2. The next one would be a 1, and the next mark would be 3/2. Let's make that a 2. So if I want x is less than or equal to 3/2, we would have a solid circle on 3/2 because it says or equal to, and I want the x values to be smaller than this number, so I'll travel to the left on the number line. Our next inequality, x is greater than or equal to -1. Again, since there's no marking on any of these number lines, we'll assume that each one represents a 1. So I would have a solid circle at -1. Again, it's included because the or equal to. And I want the x values to be greater. So to be greater, I would travel to the right. That's how we're going to go about graphing inequalities.